we've spoken about creativity before, and I know that, you know, your work is very creative, and this year the theme is more about presence. And first of all, let me start by asking you, what exactly does presence mean to you? You know, it can be interpreted in many different ways. So what is presence for you?
For presence is actually with I've really confused to think about presence meaning. I think presence is that sort of ability to be with ourselves first, present for ourselves, present as a soul, the energy, and then the presence of how we show up for ourselves is reflected in how we show up in other places, in the workplace, in our community, in our life, in our relationships. So, and for me, that's integral to the creative process as well.
And so for some people, presence is about, as you say, it's about energy, and it's about being, you know, being there in a tangible, physical way. But presence can also be metaphysical. It can also be symbolic, and presence can also be through, we can create stories about ourselves. So even though we're not physically present, people know us through the story they know about us. So an excellent example of this is, you know, people, when, let's say Martin Luther King is a story. He's not physically present, but as soon as you mention the name, we know the story and he's physically present. So in what way do you feel that when you're being creative, how much of it needs to be an actual physical, tangible presence, and how much is metaphysical, how much is symbolic and virtual even? You know, we're having this conversation, we're not physically present with each other, and this is a virtual presence that we have. So what, you know, what's your interpretation of these different ways that we're being present in the modern times?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, you know, when we first started, the first time I did the conference with you, the first time I met your presence, my presence and your presence met in a virtual sense, but yet physically, because each one of us sitting in our own physical places, although not side by side, you know, that was seemed like a relatively new kind of way to do things. You know, Zoom, whatever, maybe 4 years, I can't remember, maybe it was 4 years ago. I think I was part of the very first one, then the one that I didn't do because I was away. Yeah, so this kind of presence and kind of the narratives that we have around being present is interesting in how it's shifted. Now we've so quickly got people being present by having. I mean, I do circles now. I used to do circles in person. I wasn't sure if I would, how that would work, doing it in a different format, you know, because I was used to doing it with actual people in the actual space. So what I've discovered is actually there is still that physical presence, although physical presence, interestingly, in some ways, in a circle is an equal space. They actually show up in their little boxes, and then you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 people. It's actually very equalizing. So you have like the you know, the main speakers and sort of people who are not speakers, as well as people who are some speakers or have other parts to play in, like that actually are all in equal little box on Zoom. So in terms of like the that they take, if like Zoom is also an example of that kind of presence, I think that kind of brings there's an equalizing factor to some of this, how we use technology when it comes to kind of groups. I've very quickly gone through a very fast this learning curve of using this technology in these ways, as I say, for things that I would have done in person before. And And it really does actually. It's, it's more the intent, whether it's virtual presence or whether it's I mean, I'm still me, even though you're speaking here. I mean, and people can watch this at any time. And in some ways, you know, I'm not any less present if somebody watches it at another time. You know, for them, that is also the present. They're watching it in that moment. So, yeah, it's a lot of things about how technology surveys and ideas about presence and how that moves other things too. I mean, when it comes to things like community, enterprise, and you know, doing creative projects, I think it has a balancing factor in some ways. But yeah.
So, yeah, so it's as though creativity, you know, a lot of people say, well, everyone is creative. And some
Absolutely.
people argue, and some people still do argue that no, not everyone is creative. There is that elite kind of definition of creativity that you have to be talented to be creative. And if we're saying that creativity is a natural part of being present and we make things happen, is it easier or more difficult for us to make things happen if we are in virtual space compared with whether we are physically present? And you say that the virtual space is an equalizer, that it's more democratic, that everyone is on the same platform in a virtual space. So does that make a difference?
I think it depends also on what we're doing. So, for instance, you actually have to be creative about how to think about bringing, you know, the physical into this new structure. And for me, in the beginning, okay, I do art, creative workshops, circles. They all seem to be quite physical things. How they're going to move into something else, and I was pretty dumbfounded at the beginning. I quite think how that would be. But by doing it, by speaking to people, by making some mistakes, actually, I've learned that yeah, you can do creative projects. You have to think differently. In the same way, you prepare. You know, maybe if you know, briefing people or bringing them, you know, explaining a project, I'll need to have images maybe prepared, and I'll sort of them and put them in. So I have prepared in the same way as if I was in an actual setting, but I'm preparing for a different medium. There is another aspect, which is that very spontaneously you can call a meeting on Zoom or do, you know, Facebook Live within a group and things like that, which you can't really do, wouldn't necessarily be able to do, you know, without that virtual portal, like. So this is it can be an advantage and advantage. I think it has that kind of thing. An advantage. It's a kind of creative project, almost like thinking of different creative ways to engage people, I think, and to prepare differently for teaching in that way, or facilitating in that way. Yeah.
And in terms of emergence then, what have you noticed that has emerged from your virtual encounters that wouldn't have been able to, the possibility or the space wasn't there when you were physically doing the circles? Have you noticed the emergence of different opportunities in the virtual space compared with the physical space?
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, there was just talking about doing, where we will, be able to have, within a very sort of large group, be able to have people sharing their images live and going. So for things, so we do a project and then people upload their images that they're working on, and everybody's spontaneously looking at that all around, the globe. So it's an international project. So that is an opportunity that wouldn't have been available, say, teaching as an ordinary lecturer. And I think sort of finding opportunities like that, going with the exploration of things. Often I don't know how to do something, often. So, because it's like something that's new. I mean, there's many things that are new. I've tried a lot of new things over the last, certainly since I saw you last. I almost feel like a completely different person. I've kind of explored so many different new avenues in every, physical, and certainly in terms of like how I work with other people. So I think that was already starting to emerge, because I'd left London for different reasons, and then actually through the lockdown and stuff, everybody else has been in this situation, and I think new ways are starting to emerge, and people can be just as creative for that. I mean, I think in the end, what sort of the most important thing is maybe how we look at creativity through these kind of new platforms allows us to create with more people. It's a golden time for that, let's say. And that's one of the things that sort of embrace that aspect. And even I've been speaking to friends who live in Hong Kong, or places that are much further, more often, and even talking about doing various different things. So I think, there are definitely new opportunities that have emerged through this, which are quite positive, I'd say.
It's great. And one of the things about creativity is that very often it leaves an indelible mark, like there's a permanence about it. There's no going back. Once you've started to do things in this new way, in this new creative way, then we don't go back to the old times. And people keep saying that we will not go back to the way we were doing things before the pandemic. So what do you think is the impact of this new way that you've had to, how you've had to adapt to a new way of working?
Yeah, I like, as you say, I think it'll be onwards and upwards from this point. They're almost like the things that were teetering on the edge of change have been amplified, accelerated, whether it was how we use technology, like we were sort of teetering on the edge of doing some of these things, and this lockdown, social distancing, and everybody has had to sort of very quickly utilize their creativity to do different things. It's different people playing the piano on their balconies to I was actually part of a little project where people all sang, which was hilarious and a little bit scary for me. So I think a lot of going out of their comfort zones, kind of creating little bits of tea and sort of fun using technology, and also in this time where, we're going and socializing or going to sort of groups in the same way, but doing it online in a different way. So it certainly has changed how we do things. And I don't think there's going to be any going back. I think that, interestingly, there's so many other things that seem to, be sort of teetering on the edge now of like social injustices and things like that are all coming to the fore as well. It's almost like this acceleration of a lot of things that actually needed to come to a head. And I believe that they're coming to a head also to be changed for the better, because they're kind of to be seen, to be healed and sort of transformed. Whether it's work, some of these kind of like racist and cultural sort of issues ongoing in certainly my lifetime. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any going back to where we was before. I think it's going to be onwards and upwards, and I think it will be better.
Yes, and so the presence is not just simply physical or metaphysical or virtual. It's also about our presence in terms of positioning with others. And so, you know, the social injustices that have been exposed through the pandemic, that has created an emergence of repositioning, I suppose, hasn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. There's been a turning in for all people. I think this kind of turning inward, you know, social distancing, what else are we going to do? Some people in situations where, you know, actually I've been in this situation where my parents are both quite elderly. My father's quite, he's Parkinson's and dementia. So he is a person who needs special kind of higher level of protection around him. So so it changes how I interact with the world. If I went and did had to go to somewhere physically, then I would have to sort of come back social distance for a couple of weeks. So it's like, I think I'm thinking a lot more about how I do things, and how much my physical presence is worth that kind of engagement, what is important. And I think a lot of people are also saying, they are kind of going, you are going to, if you're in a situation like we are, people are spending more time going inwards. This is where we're going to, and this is a good thing, because probably needs a lot of time, distraction, and probably even still now we can spend a lot of time in distraction. But if you're lucky enough to have a garden, most people are using that, or you're seeing a lot more people doing creative things, using instruments or writing a book they wanted to write, or sing for the first time. So these are the good sort of things that have come out of it.
Right. Yeah, and it's about presence in terms of incubation, and presence in terms of, like, it's created opportunities on both levels. One, an opportunity for us to go deeper inside, and also at the same time to broaden our horizons internationally, and we can link up, and we can connect, we can network with people across the world.
Definitely.
So
I think,
yeah, in your life then, Kath, in your life, tell me, like, just to sum up now then, so the impact of all this that we've been going through, what has been the impact of the changes in your presence?
My presence, my physical presence, in terms of, I was a member of a gallery for a very long time, over almost 20 years, so I couldn't physically be present there anymore, and but also neither could other people, so that caused that gap, well, certainly one of them to close. So that had an impact. So looking at new ways to sell my work and to be present in that way. Projects, I would say, the quality of presence and the engagement, in some ways I find that it's brought together really interesting, different, diverse groups, for me. Working with local friends, or even friends from school, as well as people who are sort of international, that are maybe in the same group. Oh wow, that maybe would worked with in that way before. So that's also kind of changed. I think almost people to do with more like the values and sort of where people are in their energies, bringing the groups together more. So it has made a physical change to me in terms of that. See, in London, you know, was doing a lot, you know, physical networking and like that, working in different community groups, and now it's a continuation. I also do a lot more healing work, so you know, sort of healing circles, and there's, in some ways, there's more time was of the situation to do that. I probably still spend the same amount of time drawing and painting and being creative in that way, writing my own personal quality of time with myself, and, you know, whatever the divine energies, being with nature, being the source, like, of creativity. I don't think that part has changed, but it's like more with how I engage and how the groups are engaging has changed.
Okay, brilliant. So Kath, final points then? Anything else that you'd like to say about presence, emergence and impact in terms of creativity?
And the last little bit there. Anything else I'd like to say about?
Yes, anything, yeah, just to sum up then, anything else that you think it's really important at this point in time to be considering, to be pondering over, to reflect on in terms of presence, emergence and impact at this time of you know, time of change and time of opportunity?
Well, yeah, there's one of my little things that I look at every day, and I'll get it. I should remember it off by heart, but I don't. And because that, I keep it within eyes reach, and it's like everything is accurate and beneficial. This thought influences my approach to situations. Today, I experiment with the simple thought that there is a benefit in everything. I look at that after meditation. After I do qigong and meditation in the garden, and that always reminds me I am peace. Everything is accurate and better, even if, and it kind of brings a kind of peace into my self, and it helps me to see other situations with maybe the right tone. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds very powerful. Well, thank you very much, Kath. It's been a pleasure speaking with you once again, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Lovely to speak to you, and enjoy this lovely sunny day.
Thank you very much. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye.